Hello, it is Wednesday, February 16th, 2022. I'm Chris Remo, and welcome back to the New York Times Crossword Daily Solve. It is a Wednesday puzzle today, so midweek puzzle, midweek difficulty. We're still in the themed puzzles this week. And this edition of the Daily Solve, this Wednesday edition, is brought to you by Overfull Hitbox, Joseph Schwalbach, and, as always, the inestimable Hood Monster. So thank you so much to the three of them, benefactors of the Daily Solve Patreon campaign. For that support, you too could receive that recognition as well as the Daily Solve Let's Check the Crosses mug. You can find that at patreon.com/dailysolve. But of course, at any tier of the Patreon campaign, you get access to all of the bonus videos that have gone up on the Patreon feed to date, as well as the extra channel in the Daily Solve Discord chat server, where you can hang around and mingle with other members of the Daily Solve viewing community, and it's a very nice place. I like to check in there every day. And of course, thank you to everybody who has backed the Patreon campaign at any level, regardless of when or how much. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. It's what helps make this series a sustainable part of my daily work, which is obviously means a lot to me. So thank you. And now let's solve today's puzzle. How about that? The Wednesday puzzle. If you remain to the end of the video, we'll discuss some clues from yesterday's crossword. There were quite a few, actually. Got quite a few comments to read. So that'll be at the end of this video. But for now, the Wednesday puzzle. This is a crossword constructed by Rich Prue, whose name I recognize. I think has probably done half a dozen or more puzzles for the New York Times. And like I said, this is a Wednesday puzzle, so it is another themed puzzle. We'll have to see what that is. And it was edited, of course, as always, by Will Shorts. So let's get started. Why not? Weak hit. Weak hit. Does that mean sort of striking somebody without much force? Is that what that means, or is it something else? Like a hit song, but not probably the former. I'm not actually sure. What about this? X1, M2, and I3. Oh, I think those are all BMWs, and this is an and clue rather than an or, so it is pluralized. So a weak hit, what is that? I'm not sure. I wonder, though, if I can use some of these other crosses. Hindi for palace. Oh, is that Mahal as in Taj Mahal? Let's check some crosses there as well. Cowardly lion portrayer. Now, I have to admit, I think I know this mainly from crosswords, but I think it was Bert Lahr. Yeah, okay, I think so. I'm certainly familiar with that name pre-crossword, but I think the reason I know specifically he played the Cowardly Lion is because it does come up occasionally. The sign of a packed house. This is SRO, standing room only. Here's another bit. This is maybe arguably verging on crosswordese. I wouldn't say this is a sign I see very often, to be totally honest. These days, so much is sold prior to the event. It's just so much less common to go to an event that would be sold out and buy standing room only tickets on the day. But let me know. I'm curious do you encounter SRO, the sign, on a regular basis or really ever? Because I don't think I have, but it does come up in crosswords. Anyway, Lima's home. Well, my first thought was Peru, so there must be another Lima, perhaps in Ohio. The only location I can think that would fit those crosses and fit in those cells. So Lima, Ohio. It does sound sort of familiar. Weak hit. You'd think with this many letters I would be able to get it by now. Bloof? I just have no idea. Oh, well, non-dairy milk option could be oat, so it could be almost right, although I don't think it's bloof. So oat milk is a non-dairy milk. What about this? Worker designation coined by Upton Sinclair. Oh. So Upton Sinclair wrote The Jungle and Cannery Row, right? What is this? Oh, white collar. Did he coin that term? That's interesting. White collar jobs as opposed to blue collar jobs, representing white collar jobs working at, I think what we would now call, this wouldn't have been used in Upton Sinclair's day, but the knowledge economy, knowledge workers, as opposed to blue collar workers producing, manufactured goods or other such things. Anyway, that's interesting. So I'm sort of curious about that etymology. Promise that one will... Oh, is this a bloop? Weak hit bloop? That actually sounds closer than, I don't know, anything else I was thinking that was obviously wrong. Promise that one will. So plead, not sure. Confound it. Oh, pledge to. You will pledge to do something. You will promise to do something. You will pledge. A promise that one will do something is a pledge that one will do something. Pledge to do it, in this case. All right, confound it. Could be darn. That would fit the tone of the clue. So we see this confound it, and it's in quotation marks, and so we can assume that most likely, anyway, the answer will also be a verbal exclamation to match the clue. But also, it's quite noticeable that confound it is a sort of quaint oath that's sort of, it's a bit soft and also a bit dated. And so we can think, well, the answer probably will match that in spirit. And darn, maybe not, darn, I wouldn't say necessarily is as dated as confounded, but it has a similar quaint softness to it, I suppose. So it matches in that regard, and you'll usually get that in this sort of clue. Train units are cars. You could have an 8-car train, for instance. Mushrooms produce them. Spores. Mushroom produce spores, which is how they reproduce. Big hit. Oh, it could be a smash. Oh, so that's so we had a weak hit, a bloop, and a big hit, a smash. And I suppose in this case, smash could be either literally a physical hit or a hit song, like I was saying before. Children's author who wrote, "People say nothing is impossible, but I do nothing every day." That sounds, well, this looks like Milne, A.A. Milne. I wouldn't have recognized that quote, but that's extremely a very good, pithy remark. Rose of Guns N' Roses would be the singer Axl Rose. And Cheap Thrills singer 2016. Is this Sia? I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. As you know, I'm generally not up on these things, but that looks familiar to me. A mischievous fairy is a pixie. That sounds right. And that ship would be her, because ships tend to be referred to in the feminine. Okay. Traditional folk song played by British and Australian ice cream trucks. Green sleeves. We had a, so I live in the UK, and a few months ago we had this, we would hear an ice cream truck come by basically every day, and I hadn't gotten ice cream from an ice cream truck in, I can't even count how many years, and I kept trying to go out to find it, and I never found it. This went on for a couple weeks, and I never once figured out where the ice cream truck was going, or what its route was, or how I could intercept it. It was mystifying. Okay, highlighter shades are neons, and to prognosticate with a crystal ball is to scry, right? That's what that means. To scrying is to see the future using an object of that sort, like a crystal ball. Secular. So laic, perhaps, meaning not clergy, not of the church, laic. And I suppose this is secular, not, so secular has different meanings depending on the context. And in some ways it could mean non-religious, meaning not adhering, someone who does not adhere to a religion, but it could also mean someone who may be a practitioner of a religion, but is not a member of a clergy. And that's, I think, closer to what laic would mean. You're sort of a lay member of a congregation, for instance. Okay, French trick-taking game. I think écarté, if I remember correctly. I think that's a French card game, trick-taking game, but let's check the crosses to make sure. So here we have Aer Lingus. Yes, that's Irish airline, Aer Lingus. And, well, these are maybe too long to check with great confidence, so we'll get back to it. But I think écarté is the answer. I'll try and remember that this might be incorrect. Disney mermaid from The Little Mermaid is the character Ariel, so there we have that. What sex does, they say? Oh, sells. They do say it, and they, I think, accurately enough. Okay. In advertising and so on is where that's most traditionally applied. Rocky debris. Oh, is this scree? Actually sort of reminiscent of scry, but I think, a different word, obviously, but I think that might be scree, rocky debris, sort of pebbles and things. But I'm not 100% certain, so let's check the crosses. Key that's never used alone, abbreviation. I don't know what that means exactly. Here we have blank homo Nietzsche book ecce homo. I think that is behold the man. And to speak disrespectfully to is to sass somebody. So this is looking right. I wonder what this is. Key that's never used alone. A scheme could be a secret plot or a secret plan, maybe. They both start with P. So maybe let's put that there and check the crosses. To get ready, right. To get ready is to prep. So that does look right. So this could be lan or lot. I guess either one has an L, actually, as well. But let's see if we can close this out. Key that's never used alone. Oh, I see. A key on a computer keyboard. I didn't pick up on that at all. So it's control. And indeed, never might be putting it a bit too strongly, because actually could be an input in a computer game, for instance, and control could have meaning unto itself. But so never, I don't think I would agree with, but it's true that generally speaking, most of the time, control is used as a modifier key rather than an input in its own right. Okay, so Control C and V, for instance, to copy and paste. Important part. Active what? Active what? I'm not sure. Let's check this prep and make sure. Oh, sorry, here's our revealer. So here's our theme. The revealer being the clue and answer that tie together the theme clues running throughout the puzzle and give them, well, either give it an identity or explain the mechanic or whatever else. But anyway, what does this say? Envy source in Genesis 37 that hints at 18, 24, 49, and 58 across. Okay. Well, I see that these two, white collar and green sleeves, both contain colors. Actually, colors and articles of clothing. Oh, is it the coat of many colors? No, sorry. Coat of many colors. There we go. That's quite clever, because presumably we're going to assemble a coat of many colors out of these different elements of a coat. So far we have a white collar, we have green sleeves, and we'll presumably have some other dyed elements of various hues. I guess white is not a hue. I guess people argue about whether white is a color. I think we could all consider white basically to be a color, unless we're speaking in some specific scientific or color theory senses. It is a color without hue. Anyway, let's keep going. So, secret plan or plot. Oh, active role, important part. So a role, in this case, a part as in a role in a film or a dramatic production, for instance. Cherubic god, Eros, god of love, often depicted as cherub. You there could be psst. And signs of saints are halos. So this does look like secret plan in this case, rather than secret plot. And line when you're late to the punchline. Oh, I get it. That looks right. And most likely to preen. Could be the vainest person. The person most likely to preen. Features of some bike helmets. Is it visors. Right, sorry. I was thinking of V-shaped something, but no, it's visors here. And freshly could be anew. We're going to solve this crossword anew, solve it freshly. I guess you'd say that if you were doing it again rather than for the first time. Understood is I see, and upside when down. So I think this means when you're feeling down, when you're feeling blue, the thing that is the upside, the good part, is the silver lining. Every cloud has a silver lining. Oh, and of course, I didn't even realize this as I was typing it in, but that is part of our coat of many colors. So the lining is silver. And that's actually nice, because often the lining of a coat will indeed be a sort of metallic, will have a sheen to it. So that actually works quite well. Oh, and I just sort of clicked on this out of instinct for no reason. This is the final theme clue. So some sushi menu fish, yellow tails, right? So yellowtail tuna, is it, in sushi? But in this case, we have a coat with tails, the bits that drop down on the back, and they are yellow. So yellow tails. So we have a coat of many colors consisting of a white collar, green sleeves, silver lining, and yellow tails. And the yellow tails even are appropriately plural, given that tails would be plural. Very good. Very clever. A fun theme. And actually, I didn't really set out to do this, but I did the thing that people often request, which is that I completed the theme answers, not immediately after discerning the theme, but relatively quickly. Okay, donut shapes are tori, plural of torus. The shape of a donut, I guess, is the easiest way to explain it. And foot bones are tarsi. And they're placed in locks. Oars. So on a rowboat, the oar sits into a lock, the sort of bracket into which the oar is placed. To rough somebody up is to maul them. Author Jonathan Safran Foer wrote Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close and other novels. What else has he written that I've read? Everything is Illuminated as well. I think both of those got turned into films, actually. Although I've only seen one of those films. Okay, Cry for Help. Save Us, maybe? Dog Doc is a veterinarian. And a Verdi opera originally titled Amore e Morte, Love and Death. Hopefully I can get this with a few more crosses. I'm sort of blanking at the moment. All right, what about this? Devoid of pleasure. It could be loveless, maybe? No, that doesn't fit, does it? Devoid of pleasure. Joyless. That's a better match. Pleasure, joy. Plug receptacle. A jack, maybe? Sometimes say that. An Ethernet jack or something. Is that correct? No, I'm doubting that. Is that true? I think it is. Okay, first Native American tribe to meet with Lewis and Clark must be the Oto tribe. And after quite some time, could be years later, it would be quite some time indeed, something really bothered you, it ate at you. And Steve with 8 NBA championships. This is something I have to admit I know really only from crosswords, not the 8 NBA championships bit, but the name Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr, sorry. If I don't know which of those is correct, I apologize. Okay, characteristic. Someone could have a trait, a characteristic. And the problem with blank, documentary related to The Simpsons. So I don't know this documentary offhand, but presumably it involves the character Apu, who was in the news a couple of years ago. If someone gives a hand, someone aids somebody. A ballet bend is a plie. I think this came up within the last couple of days, actually, of the crossword as well. A plie, in the bend at the knee. Okay, an employer is a user, someone who uses something, employs it. A stun gun is a taser. Santa Ana, California, is a place in California, and a non-studio film is an indie film. So let's just wend our way through the remaining cells of this crossword. RB's stat. So this will be a running back, I assume is what RB stands for. Yards, presumably. Before to Shakespeare is ere long, before long. Poetic way to indicate before. And Simu Blank, star of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I do not know this TV show. Is it a TV show or film? I'm actually not sure. I know it came out relatively recently, but I'm not aware of its cast. I'm sorry. Like prunes vis-a-vis plums, they are drier. More dry. And I think it's the case. Is it the case? I'm actually not certain about this. I think it's the case that if you're saying drier as a sort of comparative adjective like this is more dry than that, I think you'd spell it D-R-I-E-R, whereas if you were spelling a dryer as in a counterpart to a washing machine, you'd spell it with a Y. Is that true? Not actually completely certain, but in any case, I think in this case it's an I. Frasier's brother on Frasier. Niles from Frasier looks right. And the Lorax author is Dr. Seuss, of course. So that makes this Simu Liu, star of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, so presumably that is correct. Sedgwick of the Closer. Don't know the Closer. Again, I'm actually not certain if that's... I mean, it's clearly either a TV program or a film, but I'm not sure which. I think there's someone, Sedgwick, ends with A. I mean, I sort of recognize this name. Kyra or Myra or something like that. I think it might be Kyra. Does that work if I put that in? Complaining about social media on Facebook, say. I don't know, maybe it's not. What about this? Carrot's counterpart. Oh, actually, maybe it is, because carrot and stick metaphorically used to describe ways to encourage somebody to do something retrospectively through enticement or punishment. Carrot and stick. So that does look like Kyra. Maybe it's Kira with an I? No. Complaining about social media on Facebook. Oh, I see. It's It's irony. It's irony because you're employing social media in order to complain about social media. Okay, so it's an illustration of irony, I suppose. A tech review site is CNET, and letter after theta is iota. Oh, and I guess we never looked back. Oh, La Traviata was the Verdi opera. Right, of course. Anyway, well, we got there indirectly. So theta, iota, and there we have it. So that was the Wednesday puzzle. A nice... Oops, my mouse is going absolutely haywire. Sorry, I can't seem to... couldn't get it onto the little X there. So that was a nice Wednesday puzzle with a nice theme. I would say on the, not too challenging side for a Wednesday, but let me know if you disagree, because it's always hard to tell from one person's perspective. So we had our coat of many colors with its white collar, green sleeves, silver lining, and yellow tails. That was a fun theme. And I remember when I arrived at this revealer, which is not in the typical location for the revealer, but rather was in the dead center of the grid. And I suppose that's because it's easier to construct a grid to put a single long answer in the middle. Whereas if this long answer had to go down here, which would be the typical location for a revealer, we would then need an equally long answer up here. That would be a little more difficult. But this worked well. We had the central coat of many colors explaining what's going on elsewhere. And when I first saw that, this NV source in Genesis 37, I do remember thinking, well, we had a few letters from colors, so white and green probably make that colors, and then the coat of many colors came from that. So it unfolded, I think, very nicely in a way that was enjoyable, and we'd already had half, I suppose, of the theme answers filled out. Let me know how you did with that. And so well done, Rich Prue, for a fun and I think pretty smooth solving theme and crossword. And now let's discuss a few clues from yesterday's puzzle. And like I said, there are several, so that's why I'm moving along relatively briskly from today's. So what do we have? This is interesting. Of note, today's wordplay column mentioned that today, February 15th, 2022, is the 80th anniversary of the publishing of the first New York Times crossword puzzle on February 15th, 1942. Wordplay included a link to the first puzzle for you to solve. That, it looks like a beast, says Jeffrey. That's so interesting. I completely, what is it? Yeah, it's the 16th now. I completely missed that. So happy 80th anniversary to the New York Times crossword. I can't believe I missed that. What a shame. But thank you for letting me know. I appreciate it. And I have glanced at that first New York Times puzzle, and it does indeed look pretty tricky, I must admit. I was thinking of trying to solve it for the channel someday. Maybe I'll still try that. But yeah, it did look like no pushover. Okay, Mordecai Hammer asks, could someone explain how and why profanity equals oath? I haven't heard the word used in that way before, and that clue really confused me. So I probably should have read these comments ahead of time so I could look these things up and have a bit more context around it. But my understanding of an oath, of why you use an oath to refer to profanity, is that my understanding is that you would swear to God something. You would use the name of a deity to promise something. You would make an oath, but that then sort of becomes also used for taking the name of such a deity in vain. Well, we would now say take it in vain. Take that name of that god in vain, using it to. It's similar to saying it's a swear word, and it's essentially the exact same etymology. Oath and swear do sort of mean the same thing. I will swear to do this. I will take an oath to do this. But they can also both be used to indicate profanity because you are sort of misusing the name of the deity. So that's my understanding of that. I probably should have read up about it before doing this, but I forgot to read through these comments ahead of time, so I'm sorry about that. All right. Regarding yesterday's theme, which, if you recall, yesterday's theme had the phrases like court disaster and field questions. They had these phrases that were took a verb and a noun and turned them into sort of literal descriptions of something, like a catastrophe at a tennis match is a court disaster, referencing the phrase to court disaster. And Rick Dinatali says, the theme answers were not verbs, but phrases with a verb and an object. And yes, that's a fair point. I guess when I said verb, I meant they were essentially, I don't know, verbal clauses. Could you say that? To court disaster is itself, it is something you do. And I guess I was using verb loosely to mean that. But you're right, disaster is obviously a noun. So these phrases incorporate a verb and an object noun. And then goes on to also observe the verbs were all sports venues: tennis court, football field, boxing ring, and swimming pool. So yeah, very good. I don't know. I either glossed over that or didn't fully parse it, so I apologize. And also, Rick Dinatali says, I was hoping you'd comment on my supposition that Saturday's I dot puzzle was a first in having the revealer answer also be the across answer in one of the revealed across down pairs. Did it have a revealer answer? Sorry, I must have completely missed whatever this was. I really should have read these ahead of time. I apologize for the shoddiness of today's comment. Rick, you're probably right, but I'm not sure off the top of my head. And finally, Rick Dinatali, also, Rick is really calling me out today, and I suppose justifiably so, says, I think you confused Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, RPI, with the Rochester Institute of Technology, RIT. And yes, that is true. I did sort of create a kind of hybrid between those two absolutely different schools, and observes Rensselaer is pronounced Rensselaer, which is why I'm saying it correctly this time, with the stress on the last syllable. So Rensselaer, sorry, I wasn't even saying it correctly. And yes, that's true. And I think Rochester Institute of Technology, that's the school that I have visited to give a talk. So I do not think I have ever been to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, but I've heard of it, and I suppose that's why I sort of conflated the two schools. So I apologize to any students or alumni of either university. Okay, and Michelle McBride Charpentier says, SAD, SADD, is Students Against Destructive Decisions, formerly against drunk driving. I love when your brain is too big and you fly past the obvious for something more specific like sororities. I don't think it's because my brain is too big. I think it's because I just sort of missed something obvious. So, but thank you for the correction. And let's see. ZOR95 finally points out lots of elements have names ending in "ine" or "eine," like iodine from yesterday. The "ide" suffix, I was wondering, is this iodide or iodine? The "ide" suffix is generally used for negative ions, anions of these. So neutral I is iodine, I negative or minus is iodide. So thank you, that was very good context. All right, so there was that. There was a marathon tour through my myriad mistakes and oversights from not just yesterday, but the last several days. So apologies for the slight sloppiness of that, but thank you for sticking with it. And I will be back tomorrow for the Thursday crossword, possibly a more difficult and obscure theme. Tends to be how it goes on Thursdays. So I hope you join me for that. Please do subscribe to the channel if you've enjoyed this. It'll make it easier to come back and find this tomorrow and the day after that and the other days as well. And if you like it, please do, well, I already said subscribe, but please do pass it on to a friend, either directly or through your online community of choice. And with that, I suppose that is the end of this video. I will be back for tomorrow's Thursday puzzle. I hope you join me. But until then, please do have an excellent remainder of your Wednesday. Take care.